For the next section, we've got a guest speaker. So Robert is from IBM. He's kindly come down from the Peak District to talk to us about distributed databases, which has got a generic name of blockchains. But essentially, they are databases that we're talking about. So when the word database came into my kind of sphere, I got interested in this. So hopefully, it's going to be relevant. I think it will be. So I'll just give you a quick background, and then Robert will take over and give us a bit more insight into the world of blockchains. So what we've just finished, effectively, is a discussion about the benchmarking module, which has been on the R&D roadmap for a while. There's some other stuff on the R&D roadmap, but going forwards, we're looking at what could be on the roadmap, and we think this is a good candidate for the next couple of years. So this is something that really we're going to be looking to engage with you on if you feel that it's relevant. We think it will be. It feeds into the overall strategy of the government construction strategy for 2025, which is looking at the key cost drivers in the industry, lowering costs, lowering carbon. And the rationale behind a lot of the BIM work has been to make everything digital, give everything a digital twin. And where people want to go with the BIM journey is to level 3, because it's at that point that you start to extract the benefits out of everything being digital. And so it's about getting people onto that BIM world, first of all, getting the hold of the supply chain using the digital tools that are available, and then giving you access to that digital information so you can start to do things like benchmark performance of assets. And we think that one of the things that you're going to need in order to derive full benefit from BIM and level 3 BIM is various technologies that are, some of them are experimental, but some of them are coming out of that experimental phase. So Internet of Things is still a conceptual kind of, for a lot of people it's conceptual, but for other people actually they're using it now to start labeling assets and getting those assets to talk back to somewhere centrally. So if you're going to have a situation where you're going to have a smart city where you can actually start to connect up all of the different utilities and all the different ports and the transportation systems, and have things like driverless cars that drive around, and you can look at repurposing a lot of the car parking spaces, then it'd be useful to have all that information to hand, so you can start looking at it as an aggregate, not just concepts. And so when I started looking at this concept of blockchains, I looked at it in the round of the whole life cycle of an asset. And we do start with the decision to build, which is a topic that we discussed earlier on. And the information flows all around all these different actors across the asset's life. But it's how to get that information from one person to the next, and how to engage with everybody, how to make sure it's valid. And it starts with the design team. They put the information together, and then it can go through its life cycle journey. And one of the tools that we've got access to at the minute is COBE. COBE is supposed to be that data interchange, the metadata that the design team puts in, so that it can then be used across the facilities management life cycle, so that it can then feed into this concept of BIM level 3 and being able to measure the performance of your assets. One of the issues for me, and having sat next to a penetration tester at Heathrow for a couple of days, kind of interrogating the security of systems, is whatever data that you're going to want to share in the future, you've got to make sure that it's secure, that you're not just going to be giving data to the world that can then use it against you and us as a society. And so the technology behind blockchains has actually come from the financial technology world. And from their point of view, for banks to use it, it's got to be secure. which is why I'm actually quite interested in this, is it allows an interchange of data, but in a secure way.
That's quite an old paper that was then, wasn't it?
Well,
1976.
so the technology that blockchains rely on, the security technology, is old, but actually now that it's started to be used, it's now become very relevant, and it's so the journey that the BIM world is on at the minute is there's still early adoption phase, really, effectively. But you in infrastructure are far more advanced. You're far closer to that level 3 world, level 3 BIM world, than the rest of the construction industry. So although this is potentially new technology for you, for the people behind you that's still kind of catching up, it will just be the way that things are done, I think, potentially. And it's not just something that is just a little kind of side project. I mean, the emphasis and the business push behind blockchains is kind of, it's a big deal for a lot of companies now. This was a picture that was taken at Heathrow of Ernst & Young advertising blockchains to everybody that passes through Heathrow. So from their point of view, this is one of their big push for their customer base. You all use SAP pretty much, I think, here, and SAP have recently announced that they are going to go into the blockchain world, and they're going to support tools for blockchains, which means that a lot of your SAP tools will have another component to them, which is you can interact with blockchain. But for a couple of years now, I think IBM have been at the forefront of this, and they've put a lot of effort into the R&D of the blockchain technology, and they're now looking at a lot of different types of use cases. They've got some example use cases, and a lot of the effort is around supply chain, and that's where the interest is, from my point of view, is connecting up data across the supply chain. So Rob's going to take over in a second and tell you a bit more about blockchains, but also Hyperledger in particular. There's different types of blockchains, and we're going to focus in on just one type specifically. And the reason for that is it's built around enterprise. So, Robert?
Great. Well, firstly, thanks very much for the kind introduction and the invitation to come and have a chat today. Please excuse us while we do the swap over. Hopefully this is going to play the game. That's a good start. Yeah, I'm just first time using this laptop for presentation purposes, so it's what could possibly go wrong? Excellent. That's a very good start. It's a very good start indeed. I was perhaps slightly did myself a mild disservice, I think, in my introduction, in that I suggested that I didn't have any background knowledge whatsoever with the construction industry. My background really, I've spent most of my life in the defence industry. First of all in the Royal Air Force, and I was a professional aeronautical engineer. And subsequently, after leaving the Air Force and joining IBM, I've been working in the defence and equipment and support arena. And I think, having listened to with great interest to all the discussions this morning, I think there's an awful lot of common ground between that particular arena, dealing with large capital projects and then maintaining them through a very long service life, 50 years plus, and the construction and infrastructure world. So it's been quite comforting that I hopefully might be able to talk with a tiny bit of credibility. But I thought I'd take a step back from Ahmed's introduction and just try and establish who had heard of blockchain before the invitations came out. for this particular event. So, okay, so we have possibly 20%. So I thought what I'd do was give a little bit of introduction to blockchain. I'm not a salesman. I'm also not a technical ones and noughts expert either. My role is kind of a client advisory role as to how, advising as to how the adoption or not of this particular technology or other technologies could benefit clients. So I thought I'd take a step back and try and explain in actually using a couple of case studies, real production case studies, how blockchain works or what it achieves, the benefits that it actually achieves in these particular instances, because I thought that would resonate rather than talking about ones and noughts and distributed databases. That bit's in there as well, but I will probably jump over that without getting too detailed. I also talk a little bit about the Hyperledger project, which is a really exciting project. Open source and very much one of the leading way to adopt blockchain technology. We'll talk a little bit about IBM's credentials in this space, but it's not a big sales pitch. It's just to give a little bit of confidence about what is going on and the actual maturity level of the technology. And if we get time in the discussion session, I'm not sure when lunch is going to actually happen. We can talk a little bit about what the next steps are if there's interest, and if once you know a little bit more about blockchain, what kind of possible use cases we could see that we could perhaps explore together. Now, I'm really going to cheat in terms of the introduction. I'm likely to get tongue-tied and completely tie myself up in knots in trying to explain how blockchain works. So I'm going to use, all being well, a YouTube video to actually do it. Okay, we've got sound. Sound doesn't seem to be working. This is a bit we should have tried before, isn't it?
There is a sound component to.
Yeah, it's got a connector.
Is there a mute? Is that on there?
No,
Oh, it's okay.
no, it's not muted.
Did you turn off the sound?
No, just on the microphone. You can maybe put the microphone to the speaker of the laptop now. Yeah, it's not coming out the speaker of the laptop, I don't think, either.
Come out there.
It's trying to put it through the display, but it's not going through the display.
We can't see the screen of it.
Oh, right.
Shall I run the video on mine? There's a crackle there.
No.
Try that one.
I think that it will run, but it's just not putting it through the.
Is it that one?
It is that video, but yeah, you can try.
Whether it's the exchange of money between two parties or documenting how goods move through a supply chain. The growth of global
Right. my instinct here is to fall back to me, and I'll do my very best to explain what's going on. We seem to have had a bit of a...
Every step of the way, from government officials to lawyers, accountants, dealers, and banks. This adds time and cost. Diamond smuggling and fraud can
Okay, so fortunately, we're going to share the presentation material with you. So at your leisure, there's 3 case studies that are covered, which unfortunately we can't show you immediately, but cover some of the most important aspects of blockchain, and there's some really neat animations of how it actually works in not too technical terms. The first case study is the Hyperledger consortium, who are currently using blockchain to manage the provenance of diamonds all the way from the mining all the way through to end use, to avoid all the issues with conflict diamonds entering the market, and making sure that all of the diamonds that are actually entering into the marketplace have the appropriate credentials and match their digital twin. So that's the first use case which is used. That's how it works. IBM are also working with Maersk, the global distribution company, shipping company, on a supply chain solution using blockchain. In particular marketplaces, because of all the processes which have to be followed for import and export of goods through ports of transit, from ports of origin through ports of transit to the ultimate destination, these goods can generate literally hundreds of documents which have to be approved and have to have the appropriate stamps in order that the goods can be legally imported. And particularly where you've got perishable goods and things like that, there's a massive issue with the timeliness and the efficiency of that processing. So IBM and Maersk have been looking at a digitised process to take all that paper-based process and put it onto the blockchain in order to reduce the instances of incorrect paperwork, to improve the efficiency of all the officials and everything are involved in it. And actually, they reckon as a consequence, if this was followed through from the current state through had wider implementation, potentially global trade itself could be increased by up to 10% as a consequence of just making the whole customs clearances, import-export processes more efficient. The final example, which is kind of an optional example for a more financially and cost interested audience, is an internal example within IBM who are using blockchain to manage their billing and invoice and billing processes and dispute resolution around those invoices with IBM's own supply chain. So we're actually swallowing our own smoke and actually using this technology ourselves to great benefit as well, in terms of reducing overall the number of disputes that are being raised and massively reducing the time to resolve the disputes. And I felt these particular examples, when you do get a chance to have a look at them in more detail with a better explanation than me, I thought each of those could resonate with elements of the construction and infrastructure business. So what is it actually all about? I think this is a similar kind of representation to that which Alma gave you. And this is kind of the before, or the as-is picture that represents where a lot of what we describe as a business network or an ecosystem, where they actually are at the moment, in that each participant in the network keeps their own records, and we call them ledgers, or the blockchain terminology specifically is ledgers. More than just a database, it's an actual ledger and an official record of a series of events or transactions. So the word that we use is a ledger rather than a database. In these instances, each participant's keeping their own version of the record and updating themselves as the business transactions occur. And obviously where there's multiple updates taking place, potentially it can be very inefficient, and there's also a danger that you don't have a single version of the truth, and the records drift apart. So, and that actually adds a lot of cost as well. And similarly, if particularly something like a bank record, that can also introduce a point of vulnerability as well. If that gets taken down, it can actually interrupt the process as a whole. So what blockchain is actually about is a trusted and distributed ledger that's shared between the parties. So effectively, all of the participants have visibility to either the whole or the part of the ledger that is relevant to that particular individual participant. And the cryptography, which was invented in 1977, is effectively the underpinning technology which makes sure that each participant is only able to see the parts of the ledger that they're entitled. And it's also the technology which underpins that all of the transactions are properly secured and properly authenticated and verifiable as having originated from the right participant. So this is what we call a permissioned blockchain, where the cryptography has been used to restrict the amount of the parts of the ledger that the different participants can see. The blockchain also allows the transactions to be governed by a set of rules. There's a capability within there called smart contracts, which effectively determines the conditions as to whether a transaction can be accepted and is relevant or shouldn't be accepted as well. So that's another level of control and an area that can also be exploited in terms of automating transaction process, acceptance of ownership, all those things. All those things can be codified actually into the blockchain. So the actual scope of the business network can be as wide or as small as you want it to be. So potentially this can be used as an internal way of integrating different parts of the same organisation. But the most business value is when you actually start using it to connect different organisations together. And those organisations can include an external regulator for regulated industries, somebody who has or somebody else who's responsibility for compliance, or somebody who's outside of the kind of traditional transactional side of actually constructing a project, but may have an interest in the status of the asset as a whole, or various assets, such as an insurer or somebody who's providing the finance to actually support the project in the first place. So it can be quite a broad church. And what the blockchain ultimately achieves is the four characteristics that are listed at the bottom. And firstly, consensus, which is something that I've heard in the dialogue, that there's the need to double entry things and validate that actually something is correct. Well, using blockchain technology, what blockchain will not accept a transaction into the ledger unless all participants agree that the transaction is valid. So that's part of the way that it works. It also has immutability in that no participant can go back and tamper with the records and the ledger itself once it's been agreed. what you have to do is raise a new transaction to effectively back out. So the full audit trail is completely there, open and visible to all the participants. This in itself can lead to provenance in terms of the assets which are being transacted, be they physical assets or digital assets. The provenance of that asset can be assured because we know where it's come from and how the ownership has changed over time, because it will be reflected in a transaction on the blockchain. And then finality, which means there's just one place, a single version of the truth to determine the ownership of the asset or completion of a transaction. And that's effectively what we mean by the shared ledger. So a quick summary and a quote from the CEO of Hyperledger, who saw that blockchain was saw an opportunity from the blockchain technology to actually do something that wasn't even possible before. Had that vision. But there's the important thing there is, or a couple of other important points, is that it gives people control and visibility over the information, but it's quite a democratic way of managing the information. So it's not just one entity exerting control over everybody else. It's much more about a collaboration in terms of sharing information. So just moving on to Hyperledger, the IBM have invested very significantly in blockchain technology over the last 3 or 4 years. Most recently, they've become one of the leading lights in the Hyperledger project, which has got currently, I think, 143 members from across the IT services industry, but also in the business world, the financial services world, a very wide and very high-profile set of participants, all of whom who are trying to coalesce on a standard, effectively, for blockchain. There are other standards out there. There's one called Ethereum, one called Ripple. This is probably the biggest, and I'm not a salesman, will probably say the best, but just look at the evidence of who's involved in it. The Hyperledger project has delivered very recently the version 1 of one of the core products, which we call Hyperledger Fabric. And effectively, this is the core capability for running production blockchain networks. So in terms of the move from experimental to something which can actually is fit for purpose for use in the enterprise world and is in production and being used by Maersk, by Hyperledger, and is being looked at in probably the vast majority of the financial markets, stock exchanges and the like, clearing houses. This is kind of the number one product, really, and it has a number of facets which mean that it's that effectively ensure its fitness for those particular purposes within the enterprise. And its key difference with things that you may have heard, which have been used as synonymous with blockchain, is Bitcoin, which I guess most people would have heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a form of blockchain. It's a particular instance of blockchain, but it doesn't share all of these characteristics. It's very focused on a particular purpose around financial transactions. It's a cryptocurrency, effectively. Some of these facets, but by no means all of them. So when you hear blockchain, it's not the same as Bitcoin. Although Bitcoin, some people say they got there first, but only with a very specific product. So this is the fabric that runs all of these transactions and provides the shared ledger that we've just described. The other part of the Hyperledger project is some tooling that allows kind of a non-technical view of the blockchain and start looking at design tooling effectively to look at the business networks, who the participants are in those business networks, what the permissions might be in order that they can fulfill their role in those business networks, and also looks at some of the integration tooling, so you can integrate blockchain with existing systems, be they planning software or major ERP systems such as SAP, because the blockchain potentially won't hold all of the information that's in your ERP system. You publish or accept from the blockchain a subset of information that is relative to be exchanged. It's not a question of putting everything out there into the public space. So that's the Hyperledger Composer. So they are open source technologies. The Linux Foundation Hyperledger Fabric, it's just gone to version 1, which is in alpha test with in a lot of the production environments. The Fabric Composer is out there as well for use. IBM, as you expect as well, the other part of their investment, in addition to contributing 44,000 lines of code to the open source project, the Hyperledger project, has also got a whole raft of different offerings around the hosting of blockchain technology and various engagement services to help customers get their heads around it, show them videos. And also a construct which we call garages, where basically they're almost blockchain design studios, where clients can come and visit us and work with us and explore the use cases and see where the business benefit's going to be. We use a technique called design thinking that's really good at bringing out where pain points are and what the possible solutions might be, looking from a variety of different perspectives, which we call personas. So personas could range from being an asset owner and what benefits an asset owner could get from blockchain, all the way through to being quite a small SME that's involved in the lower tiers of a construction project and seeing what the benefits might be for that particular persona as well. I think just to summarise IBM's credentials, we've got 9 live production blockchain networks, not experimental, but production blockchain networks across various markets: financial services, supply chain, luxury goods, the diamonds. We're working with government agencies around identity, because blockchain also has potential in that particular space. From a global perspective, we're also working with Walmart in China around food products. We've done 400 odd different engagements of various shapes and sizes, and we're have built and continue to build an ever-increasing array of expertise in this particular space. I won't read through all the credentials there, so hopefully you know about IBM as a brand and as a company and what we're able to do in the enterprise world. But rest assured that's replicated in the blockchain world. We've got a couple of lessons learned really from the work that's been done. IBM has its own research body called the Institute for Business Value, and they go out and survey with senior managers, senior executives across the business world, our own customers and non-customers as well, about how they've been using blockchain up to date. And from that, they've very recently come out with 3 lessons identified. The these reports are also available. I think we can share a little reading pack of loads and loads of links for those who want to dig a little bit deeper. But this whole report is there with all the background data. I think this will resonate a little bit in terms of blockchain working. I think we've got to explore with the use cases how everybody in the ecosystem can be involved. I think that's probably the key, and how it's a benefit to everybody. And I think it's a similar story in a way to the standards that we described at the beginning as well, in terms of how to get the little guys, what's in it for them, and how to reduce the barriers of entry for making sure that they're involved. So that from the very beginning of a project life cycle, when assets are being manufactured or created for inclusion within a huge infrastructure project, making sure that it can capture all the relevant detail right at the very point of inception. So that echoes with my own experience of working with major defence projects as well. Because if you don't start off with clean data about assets, then you never get it. You never get it back later on in the life cycle. In terms of starting, try and work with a small trusted group, and I guess this is a trusted group of some description, but and start small and then build out from there, and try and find an ecosystem, but find like-minded individuals who are willing to share and take a little bit of a risk. And I think the experience is that where we are in the life cycle of blockchain, or the evolution of blockchain, is that at the moment we're still exploring, very much exploring with customers what the bounds of the possible are. But I think the advice really, or the lessons learned, is to get involved, do a pilot, start discussing it with the appropriate network within your ecosystem, because not only does blockchain have the capability to transform existing ecosystems, blockchain as a technology has the capability to create ecosystems that can lead to certain existing players who act as an intermediary, for instance, being disintermediated, actually taken out of the game, because the work that they were doing, acting on behalf of others, the technology can actually replace them. So it's this story of either get in there and try and be a bit disruptive, otherwise be prepared to be disrupted yourself. In terms of the engagement model, we're kind of over on the right-hand side as you look at it at the moment. If anybody is interested, what we offer is the ability to talk, explore the business models or ecosystems. We offer for those people who are more technical, the technical teams, or those of a more technical bent, we have hands-on capability, and then we can start looking at whether or not we want to do a first project. So those would be the next steps, or lots more talking, exploration with, if you feel that there's people in your organisations who may have interest in this as well, we're more than happy to talk to anybody, to Heart's Content, or take things forward in whatever way you like, really. I've got more material. I'm conscious that lunch is sat over there, and questions?
We're going to the afternoon session is going to cover this in a little bit more detail to see the relevancy of why we're suggesting this. So if you've got any kind of initial thoughts, there's a word there called smart contracts. And just to give you one example of how you may use blockchain technology is, if you have a beam of steel that's manufactured in a factory, you could use this to keep track of it as it moves from the factory or through the factory through to the site, which means that at some point you can take delivery of that. And the point at where you say that's where I'm going to take delivery of it, that's where you exchange contracts using the technology. So that when somebody signs for it, that's ownership proven to move from the person delivering it to you. Which means for things like off-site storage, things like insurance, you're insuring it. For things like valuations, off-site materials, on-site materials. A lot of this, actually, what you'll end up with is a ledger saying what you now own, what the market owns still, or what the supply chain owns. So that's one example. There's things like collateral warranties as well. So simple insurance contracts. When you go through practical completion of a project or part of a project, the ownership transfer can happen automatically, effectively, once the pieces of paper are signed. So there's lots of applications. One of the things that I think is of benefit is this material tracking and also plant tracking as well, so that you know where the plant is. So there's lots of the ERP side of things. And the fact that it communicates with SAP now, with SAP is supporting it, means you get visibility at the finance side as well. So it's connecting up what we do within the costing world to the design, to the manufacture, through delivery, through to completion, through to payments.
What about when you've got systems where your suppliers on SAP and we're on Oracle?
So
if blockchain is an integration technology, effectively, that doesn't care where the information is coming from. The important thing is around defining the information sets that's going on the blockchain. So effectively defining the transaction and what that means in terms of the information set. It doesn't care. So it can interact through what's called an API, an application programming interface, into any of those systems. And a lot of those are actually pre-built for the major ERP systems. There are pre-built what we call an adapter, that just means you can plug in and extract or input the data that you want. So you can either extract from a system that such and such a transaction has happened, transfer of ownership, and then automatically input it into the so from a supplier's perspective, they say I've shipped it, and that transaction can automatically go into the destination system.
Can I ask, was it utilized in the construction industry, and if not, maybe some close industry like maybe aerospace or some other physical assets are?
A lot of the examples in the videos are probably the most relevant that we have in terms of case studies at the moment. So there's the Maersk one, which is around customs and shipment of physical assets. But what's happening under the covers really is it's an ownership change transaction, or a process step transaction that's been recorded. And if you can forget that it's customs based and think of it in terms of what that means, what's the equivalent within construction, then you can kind of extrapolate out and do that.
Logistics type tracker versus cost tracker. So where does it transition?
So there is it's track and trace. It supports the track and trace kind of thing for physical goods, but it can also, if you look at the life cycle of a major project, it can also track approvals. You mentioned gateway reviews, and having baseline, because you can attach certain documentation. And in the diamond example, they've got photographs and effectively a digital ID of the diamonds in consequence, and you can attach that to the particular transaction, so that you've got everything to refer to, and so everybody knows exactly at a given point in time where we are in terms of project approvals, where we are in terms of the design baseline, where we are, and you can actually extract reports as well that say how does the for instance the as built baseline for a particular asset or component of infrastructure compare to the as designed, based on the transaction records.
It's more of a granular detail of a work breakdown system and the workflow coming through of what's been completed and not completed within your. That's where you'd look at very much a PMO office
Yes.
using a lot of this information to validate its status and progress
Yeah.
within the WBS.
So there's an initial benefit of the life cycle of a project to completion, but the ledger exists for the lifetime that you want it for the asset, and also when you create a new asset. So if you get rid of one, you can then replace it with another. So it does transition from the construction phase into the operation phase, and that's a key aspect of connect that whole life cycle.
And beyond as well, we're looking at use cases and very interesting use cases where it's more of a, rather than a linear life cycle from concept all the way through to disposal at the end of it, where you've actually got a circular life cycle where there's an element of recycling or whatever at the end that, you know, something might be pulled apart, but then the steel or whatever may be recycled and go into another project.
Little swirls all the way along. You've got the relifing of stuff as you go through it. Isn't it?
Absolutely, and
Little swirls.
reverse supply chain, and we've. I mean, if some of the work that I did in the defence industry, looking at engines and other aero engines and major components that went back to the manufacturer, and then certain elements went off potentially to another country and were used, and then would come back and would be used again. Being able to maintain the provenance and a valid contiguous history of what happened with those assets through their entire life across multiple stakeholders. If it had blockchain then, my job 5-6 years ago would have been, you know, I would have been very, very excited to be able to use blockchain under those circumstances. So
one comment is, I'm obviously very excited about this type of technology and very enthusiastic, but most of the things that you were talking about, the values are, from in my mind, they're already enabled by other technologies. So I would be very keen to understand where is the unique value proposition of blockchain and why blockchain against other technologies that are available in the market already. So
blockchain, I think the idea of sharing, the idea that it's distributed and it works on a peer-to-peer basis, so you have multiple copies effectively of the ledger that are all kept completely in sync in near real time, offers distinct benefits. Whilst conceptually you could say that, oh well, we'll just put in a shared database and everyone will use it. It's not the same. When you look at the instances in the real world of shared databases being used across an entire ecosystem, it almost never ever happens because of various issues with trust and control and that kind of thing. Everyone wants control of their own destiny, whereas this is a much more democratic way of achieving sharing of the appropriate information in a way that doesn't create chaos by having multiple unsynchronized copies of the same data set. When I've joined things up previously, you've ended up with multiple copies, but not of the same thing. So you'll have your version. I've got my version of what's happened during the duration of the last month of the maintenance contract, and my contractor's got their version of what's happened during the last month. And we have a service review meeting, and we spend the entire meeting arguing why my information isn't the same as your information, rather than discussing what's actually happened in terms of the service contract. So this is different in that everything's completely synchronized, and the technology is making sure that you've got that assurance. So everybody's got trust in the system without necessarily having to trust completely all the other parties, because the system is enforcing that. That's the novel part of the architecture.
Just one question. Are there any limits in terms of the data types that you talked about?
Essentially, you can attach or link different data types, be they JPEGs, movies, whatever. From a technical perspective, there's obviously going to be storage constraints, probably just size constraints ultimately. But this is what we call a cloud. Well, in its kind of purest form is a cloud-hosted service, the IBM managed services. So effectively, it's pretty elastic in terms of it can grow and it can scale to meet the requirements.
So if you want to stick around for the afternoon session, we're going to go a little bit deeper. Not too deep, but a little bit deeper. So otherwise, we can stop for lunch.
Yeah, we're very, very keen to have any idea. If this hasn't been, if missing the videos, was too traumatic, and want to go through the process again, more than happy to have group or individual sessions. We can come and visit you. More than welcome to come and visit the garage. And my contact details are on the front screen as well, and I'll share the presentation as well, and with the links. They're only on YouTube, so there's no issue with being able to access them.
Thank you, Rob.
Right.
We will follow that up, I think.
Sorry to keep you from your lunch.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yes.